The sun hung low over the dusty town of Redridge, casting a warm amber glow over the uneven cobblestones and worn wooden stalls of the market square. A crowd had gathered in a semicircle around a makeshift auction platform where a single figure stood, the auctioneer, his voice rising and falling like the rhythm of a drum. Today's spectacle was no ordinary transaction. Today, a a stallion, was to be sold, one of the rarest in the region, untamed, unbroken, and rumored to be as fierce as a thunderstorm. The horse stood at the edge of the pen, muscles taut beneath his sleek black coat, nostrils flaring with every shivering breath. His hooves pawed at the earth impatiently, sending small clouds of dust into the air. Eyes dark and unyielding, he scanned the crowd, his ears swiveling, to catch every murmur and whisper. Many in Redridge had seen horses, but few had encountered a creature like this, an embodiment of raw, unbridled energy that seemed to hum beneath the skin. Whispers spread through the audience. "They say he bit a man just yesterday," a merchant muttered. "No one can ride him," said another, shaking his head. "He's a devil in disguise." The auctioneer raised a hand, silencing the chatter. "And now," he bellowed, voice cracking with excitement, "we have before you the infamous stallion known only as Nightshade. Fierce, strong, untamed. Who will give him a home or dare try?" Bidders shuffled their feet, adjusting hats, eyeing each other warily. Some saw opportunity, others saw danger. But the stallion, oblivious to the schemes of men, continued to arch his neck, nostrils flaring, tail swishing like a whip. He was a storm contained within a living frame of sinew and spirit, daring anyone to challenge him. At the back of the crowd, a figure moved with quiet purpose. She was young, not yet hardened by the rough ways of the town, her eyes sharp and intent as they settled on the horse. Her name was Alara, and something about the animal's wildness spoke to her, not fear, but recognition. Every muscle, every flare of his nostrils, every wary blink seemed to whisper to her, "I am more than they see. I am more than they believe." The auctioneer pounded his gavel, calling for opening bids. Hands shot up, voices clamored, but none could meet the price that reflected the stallion's reputed worth. Then, as the tension grew, a sharp voice cut through the murmur. "Don't hurt him." Heads turned. The crowd gasped. Whispers rippled like a sudden wind through dry grass. She pushed her way forward, skirt catching on crates and the legs of startled spectators. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with urgency. She could see the way the horse flinched at every loud shout, every sudden movement, how his muscles tensed, ready to bolt or defend himself. I'll buy him," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow, a smile curling under his handlebar mustache. "Are you certain, young lady? This beast is no pet. He's wild, untamed, dangerous." "I don't care," she said, stepping closer. "He doesn't deserve to be hurt. I'll give him a home, and I'll treat him with respect." The crowd murmured again, some incredulous, others skeptical. It wasn't common for a woman, especially someone so young, to claim such a formidable animal. But the stallion seemed to sense the difference in her approach. His ears flicked toward her, nostrils twitching, eyes narrowing. There was no fear. In his gaze, only curiosity and a quiet acknowledgement. The auctioneer, sensing a potential sale that would stir the town for months, banged his gavel decisively. "Sold," he declared, and the sound echoed through the square. Gasps and whispers erupted as coins exchanged hands, but the stallion's focus never wavered from the young woman. She took a tentative step into the pen, heart racing. Dust rose. With the movement of hooves, the air thick with tension and anticipation. She reached out, slowly, deliberately, letting her hand hover near his muzzle. He sniffed, wary, every muscle ready to strike or flee. And yet, despite the danger, there was a connection, invisible yet undeniable, that passed between them, a silent understanding that this moment, this first touch, would define them both. The crowd gradually thinned, leaving only murmurs of disbelief behind. But for Alara, the world had narrowed to the dark, shining eyes of the stallion before her, a being of fire and shadow, waiting to see if she could truly match his strength with patience and his wildness with trust. The moment the auction ended, Alara felt the weight of responsibility settle over her like a heavy cloak. She knew that buying the stallion wasn't just a transaction, it was a commitment that would test her patience, courage, and every ounce of resolve she had. The murmurs of the crowd still lingered in her ears, some filled with admiration, most dripping with disbelief. A young woman buying the wildest horse in Redridge? They whispered. She'll regret it. But Alara didn't hear the doubters. She only saw the horse. The one that townspeople called Nightshade, a creature of power and fury, was more than his reputation. His dark eyes, sharp and penetrating, held something she recognized immediately: strength, intelligence, and a streak of independence that refused to be caged. He was untamed, yes, but there was something honest in his wildness, something she could work with if only she approached him the right way. She stepped closer, letting the dust swirl around her boots, and studied him carefully. His muscles rippled beneath his glossy black coat, his flaring nostrils and twitching ears marking him alert to every movement. Most people would have seen danger. She saw potential. The potential for a bond built not on fear or dominance, but on trust. "Come on, boy," she whispered, her voice low and soothing, almost a song. The horse tilted his head, regarding her with cautious curiosity. He snorted softly, stamping a hoof, as if to say, "Prove it." Alara knew the challenge ahead would be unlike anything she had faced. This was not a horse that would bend to commands, that would yield to force or intimidation. Every approach had to be deliberate, every gesture careful. She would need patience measured in hours and days, not minutes. But for the first time in her life, she felt a kind of clarity, a certainty that this challenge was meant for her. She signed the final papers with a steady hand, ignoring the auctioneer's impressed grin. The money she had saved over years, working odd jobs around town, now became a bridge to the impossible. She watched as he was led from the pen, the stallion's hooves clattering against the wooden planks of the walkway. He resisted slightly at first, pulling against the handler's grip, but his eyes never left hers. She knew that in those moments, before any saddle or bridle was placed upon him, she had already begun to communicate something vital. She wasn't going to hurt him. When the handler finally released him in the wide, grassy paddock she had prepared, the stallion hesitated for a long, tense moment, nostrils flaring, ears twitching. He paced in a circle, muscles coiled like springs, eyes darting to every shadow, every movement. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have turned back, overwhelmed by his power. But Alara stood firm, her hands unclasped, body relaxed. She didn't demand his trust. She offered it. "Name him wild all you like," she murmured, softly, brushing a hand over the thick mane that shimmered in the sunlight. "But I see strength in your eyes." Her words weren't for the horse. They were a promise to herself as much as to him. That strength, that fire she saw, wasn't something to dominate. It was something to honor. Nightshade's ears flicked toward her again, and for a heartbeat, their gazes locked. She could almost feel the wariness behind his eyes, the instinct to bolt, to resist. But there was also a spark, a flicker of curiosity, a question lingering in his gaze. "Can I trust you?" Alara didn't answer with words. She stepped back slowly, letting him take the initiative, letting him move on his own terms. She watched him trot a cautious circle, testing boundaries, sniffing the air, the grass, even the wooden fence that confined him. Every motion was a calculation, a measure of her intentions. She didn't correct him, didn't push him. She waited. Hours passed. Shadows stretched across the paddock. The wind rustled the grass, and the stallion, after long minutes of careful observation, finally approached. Head lowered, nostrils twitching, he allowed her to reach out again. Their first true touch, soft and hesitant, was electric, a silent agreement that neither would betray the other. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, Ilara felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. She had made her decision, and she would stand by it. She didn't know what lay ahead, the falls, the resistance, the unknowns of a wild creature, but she knew this much. She would face them, and together they would find a bond stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. As she walked to the small barn she had built for him, Nightshade trailing a cautious step behind, she whispered one last word into the cooling evening air: trust. It hung between them, unspoken but understood, a fragile beginning. And in that beginning, both human and horse took their first step into something neither had known before, a partnership forged not in submission, but in mutual respect, patience, and recognition of the strength each saw in the other. The next morning, the paddock glistened with dew, each blade of grass sparkling in the soft sunlight as if the world itself had paused to watch the forming bond between human and horse. Ilara returned to the fence with a bucket of oats, her heart steady but her mind racing with anticipation. Nightshade, as the auctioneer had called him, had spent the night restless, pacing the far corners of the paddock, ears flicking toward every sound. Yet now, when he saw her approach, there was a subtle shift, a cautious acknowledgement that she was different from the others who had come before. Ilara knelt by the edge of the fence, setting the bucket down. She didn't rush, didn't demand his presence. She let him choose, letting the quiet morning stretch between them. Slowly, with the precision of someone reading a code only partially understood, Nightshade approached. His hooves sank into the damp earth with a soft, deliberate sound, each step a question. Are you still the same? Will you harm me? She extended her hand, palm open, a silent offering. He sniffed, nostrils flaring, then dipped his head closer. Her fingers grazed the tip of his muzzle, the first contact that truly belonged to both of them. It was electric in its simplicity, a spark that sighed, I see you. I honor you. Wild, she murmured, almost to herself, watching his dark eyes glimmer in the morning light. Yes, that's what they'll call you. The word carried the weight of reputation, of fear, of all the assumptions people would make about him. But she shook her head gently. Name him Wild all you like, she added, voice stronger, deliberate. I see something else in you, strength, courage, spirit. Nightshade shifted, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. There was an intelligence in his gaze that startled her, the awareness of recognition, as if he understood the significance of her words. Most horses would have reacted to the tone of voice, to the subtle cues in her posture. But this one, he was measuring her intentions, testing them against his own instincts. He was not a creature to be tamed with commands or force. He demanded understanding, respect, and patience. Ilara stayed low, allowing him to circle her, allowing him to assert himself while she remained steadfast. I'm not here to control you, she whispered. I'm here to understand you, to be worthy of your trust. Her voice carried no judgment, no demand, just acknowledgement. The words were almost magical, a bridge built from the recognition of his wildness rather than the attempt to suppress it. As the minutes stretched into hours, Nightshade's movements slowed. His eyes never left hers, but the tension in his muscles began to soften, the rigid readiness to bolt easing slightly. He nibbled at the oats she had set down, then paused, glancing at her as though to invite her closer. She knelt fully on the damp grass now, letting the horse approach without fear, without hesitation. "You are more than wild," she said quietly, brushing a hand along the curve of his neck, feeling the power beneath the sleek coat. "You are strong, smart, unyielding, and that is exactly why I will not let them harm you. You are not a prize to be won. You are a being to be respected." The stallion shifted again, snorting softly, as if responding to her words in his own way. It was then that she realized the significance of a name, not just the label, but the recognition of identity. "Nightshade," she said, voice firm, gentle and certain. "I will call you what you are, but I will see more than the fear others see. I will see your strength." The horse's ears flicked once, a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement. Though he did not speak, Elara felt it, a communion forged in understanding rather than possession. She spent the rest of the morning walking alongside him in the paddock, letting him set the pace, allowing him to explore, to feel safe in her presence. She mirrored his movements subtly, staying light on her feet, speaking in soft tones, never forcing proximity, never demanding submission. Every interaction was a lesson, every glance a question answered through trust rather than command. By midday, she had noticed something extraordinary. Nightshade had begun to follow her, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity and choice. Each tentative step closer was a small victory, a testament to the patience and respect she had offered. In that quiet, sunlit paddock, the bond that would define their journey had begun, not fully formed, but unmistakably present. Elara stepped back and watched him as he moved through the grass, ears flicking, muscles rippling, eyes bright with alertness and intelligence. "Wild you may be," she whispered, "but I see the heart beneath the strength, the spirit beneath the fire, and together we will learn what that truly means." For the first time since the auction, she felt a profound certainty. This was not just a horse to ride or a beast to tame. This was a partner, a companion, a reflection of her own courage and patience. And as the wind ruffled Nightshade's mane, and the sun caught the sharp edges of his form, Elara knew that this moment, the naming, the recognition, the beginning of trust, was the foundation for everything that lay ahead. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and dew, as if the world itself was holding its breath for what was about to happen. Elara stood beside Nightshade at the edge of the paddock, a saddle in her hands, her heart hammering with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Today, she would attempt something both daring and delicate, her first ride. She knew this would not be a simple feat. Nightshade was untamed, his strength and spirit unbound, and any wrong move could result in a dangerous accident. The stallion shifted under her gaze, muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat. His ears flicked, nostrils flaring, tail twitching with alertness. He had begun to trust her in small ways, following her steps and responding to her quiet voice, but this was something different. The saddle was a foreign object, a symbol of control, and she needed him to see it not as a threat, but as a tool for partnership. Elara approached slowly, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She spoke softly, letting her voice flow like a calm stream. "I won't hurt you," she murmured, running a hand down his neck, feeling the taut power beneath the surface. Nightshade lowered his head slightly, sniffing the leather of the saddle, as if weighing her intentions. The moment hung in fragile balance. One wrong gesture, one sudden movement, and the fragile trust they had built could shatter. She lifted the saddle carefully, placing it across his back. Nightshade tensed, muscles stiffening like coiled springs. He stomped a hoof and let out a snort, but he did not flee. Elara kept her voice steady, guiding him through the unfamiliar sensation. "This is not a command, not a trap," she said. "This is a tool for us to move together as partners. Will you let me try?" The horse tilted his head, eyes meeting hers, and in that gaze she saw a flicker of consideration, a silent question. "Can I trust you with this?" Minutes stretched as she adjusted the saddle straps, each movement deliberate and gentle. Nightshade shifted under her hands, occasionally stepping back, occasionally lowering his head to nuzzle her hand. She mirrored his movements subtly, letting him feel her calm presence, letting him understand that she was not a threat but an ally. Finally, she swung a leg over him, settling carefully into the saddle. Nightshade started, muscles taut, ready to bolt, but she remained steady, her weight balanced, her voice soft. "Easy," she whispered, stroking his mane, letting him feel her intention. "I am with you. We are together in this." Slowly, imperceptibly, he relaxed, allowing the first tenuous contact to hold without panic. Their first steps were cautious, tentative. Nightshade moved with careful deliberation, testing her balance, testing the space around him. Alara responded in kind, shifting her weight gently, letting her legs brush against his sides to guide rather than command. She spoke in low tones, encouraging him, praising the smallest responses. "Good," she murmured. "You're doing well. I see you. I trust you." Every moment was a negotiation, a silent dialogue between two beings learning to move in sync. Nightshade occasionally jerked, shook his head, or tried to pivot sharply, but each time Alara adjusted, grounding herself, letting him know that sudden movements would be met with understanding, not fear. Slowly, like water finding its path around rocks, they began to flow together. The real test came when she urged him into a gentle trot. Nightshade stiffened at first, hooves striking the earth with force, but she stayed present, matching his rhythm, letting her weight and voice guide him. He shied at a rustling in the nearby brush, muscles coiling instinctively, but she remained calm, murmuring softly, and he followed her lead, slowly regaining composure. By the time they had circled the paddock, the fear that had defined the first moments of the ride had transformed into a tentative trust. Nightshade's movements were still strong and untamed, but there was a willingness there, a willingness to test the boundaries of this new partnership. Alara leaned forward slightly, letting him feel her intention, and he responded with a subtle ease, a small acknowledgement that she was no longer just an intruder in his world. As she dismounted, knees shaking with adrenaline, she pressed her forehead to his neck. "We did it," she whispered. "We're learning, together." Nightshade snorted softly, nudging her shoulder, a simple gesture but one that spoke volumes. Trust had been tested, and while fragile, it had taken root. Alara stepped back, taking a deep breath. She knew this was only the beginning. There would be falls, mistakes, moments of doubt, but the foundation had been laid. For the first time, human and horse were moving as one, not through control, but through understanding, respect, and patience. And in that shared rhythm, she glimpsed the extraordinary potential of what they could become together. Days passed, and with each sunrise, the bond between Alara and Nightshade deepened. The early morning light found them in the paddock together. Not just rider and horse, but companions learning to understand one another in ways words could not convey. Every movement, every glance, every subtle gesture carried meaning, and each day revealed more of the stallion's complex personality, his intelligence, his caution, and the spark of curiosity that she had glimpsed the first morning. Alara started by establishing routines. She groomed him meticulously, running brushes along the curves of his strong muscles, cleaning his hooves, and checking every inch of his body for scratches or tenderness. She whispered to him as she worked, soft sounds of encouragement and reassurance. "You are safe here. she murmured one morning, the rising sun catching the sheen of his coat. "I will not hurt you. I am with you." Nightshade, once so wild and wary, began to lean into her hands, nuzzling her palm and letting out soft snorts of contentment. Feeding became another ritual of connection. She introduced oats and water at predictable times, always allowing him to approach at his own pace. There were moments when he hesitated, nostrils flaring at new smells or unexpected sounds, but she never forced him. Patience, she learned, was the strongest language she could speak. Slowly, he began to anticipate her presence, following her around the paddock with a curiosity that bordered on affection. Beyond the daily care, Ilara introduced gentle exercises to strengthen trust. She led him on long walks through the fields, surrounding the paddock, sometimes halting to let him investigate rustling leaves or the shadows of trees. She mirrored his pauses, staying low in her tone and gentle in her movements, never rushing him. And with each exploration, she noticed subtle signs of his intelligence, how he calculated the ground, gauged distances, and responded not out of instinct alone, but with a deliberate awareness of her guidance. One afternoon, she decided to test a simple command, asking him to step over a fallen log. Nightshade froze at the obstacle, muscles tense, ears flicking to the sky. She took a deep breath, crouched slightly, and spoke softly. "I am here. You can trust me. Just one step at a time." Slowly, he raised a hoof, then another, crossing the log with measured precision. Ilara's heart lifted. It was a small victory, but in it lay a revelation. He was learning that she was not there to dominate him, but to walk beside him. As the days turned into weeks, they experimented with more complex tasks. She guided him around cones in the paddock, teaching him to respond to shifts in weight and the subtle pressure of her legs. She practiced short trots and gentle turns, always mindful of his reactions. When he stumbled or balked, she never punished him. She adjusted her approach, waited, and tried again. Nightshade began to move more confidently, trusting her cues, testing boundaries with a newfound willingness to engage rather than resist. The emotional bond grew in parallel with the physical. Ilara began to notice the small ways he showed his trust: a lowered head as she approached, a nudge of his muzzle, the subtle relaxation of his muscles when she spoke his name. And in return, she learned to read him not just as a horse, but as a creature with moods, instincts, and a keen awareness of their shared environment. Their connection became a dialogue without words, a mutual understanding that transcended human and animal alike. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the paddock in deep orange and violet, Ilara stood beside him, hand resting lightly on his neck. "You are more than wild," she said softly. "You are remarkable. And together, we can be remarkable too." Nightshade snorted softly, leaning slightly into her touch, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had forged. It was in these moments that she realized the depth of the transformation. Nightshade, once feared as a beast too dangerous to tame, had begun to show loyalty, intelligence, and even affection. He still retained his wild spirit, but it was tempered by trust and understanding. And for Ilara, every small triumph, the first trot without fear, the crossing of an obstacle, the quiet acceptance of her touch, was a reminder that patience and respect could unlock even the fiercest of hearts. By the end of the 5th week, the townspeople began to notice the change. They watched from a distance as she led Nightshade through the fields, walking and trotting together, the stallion moving with a grace and strength that was no longer frightening but awe-inspiring. Whispers of admiration replaced the earlier doubt. "She has tamed him without force," one farmer said, eyes wide. "And yet he is still as proud as ever." Ilara, however, paid little attention to the gossip. Her focus was on the subtle cues, the tiny shifts in his demeanor that revealed the progress they had made together. The bond was not about control or dominance. It was about understanding, trust, and mutual respect. And as the sun set, casting long shadows over the paddock, she felt a quiet certainty. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever trials tested their connection, they would face them together. Strong and united. The calm of the paddock was shattered one morning by the sound of hooves clattering across the dirt road. Elara looked up to see a rider approaching, his posture arrogant, a smirk playing across his sun-baked face. It was Urek, a well-known horseman in Redridge, famous not for kindness or skill but for his pride and competitiveness. His horse, a sleek chestnut, moved with polished precision, every step a demonstration of control and training. Well, Yorick called, his voice carrying easily across the paddock. So, this is the infamous Nightshade. And you, little Elara, think you can handle him? He laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. I've seen him buck before, toss men like ragdolls. What makes you think a girl can ride him? Elara's jaw tightened. She had anticipated skepticism from the townspeople, whispers and doubt, but Yurek's tone was more than that. It was a direct challenge. She met his gaze evenly, letting neither fear nor anger show. I don't intend to impress you, she said quietly. I ride him for trust, not for show. But if you wish to test that, I am not afraid. Yorick raised a brow. Not afraid, huh? Then I propose a challenge. You and your wild beast against me on the forest trail. If you fail, the townsfolk will see the truth. Some creatures are meant to be broken, not befriended. His grin widened. And you'll learn your place. Elara's stomach tightened. The forest trail was notorious, narrow paths lined with roots, fallen logs and rushing streams that could unsettle even the most experienced horse and rider. Many riders avoided it, and she had never dared to take Nightshade there. Yet she felt a spark ignite within her, a mix of determination and resolve. This was not about proving something to Yorick, it was about testing the trust she had cultivated, about stepping into the unknown with Nightshade as her partner, not her mount. I accept, she said calmly, letting the words carry conviction. Not to prove him to you, but to show what he and I can do together. Yorick laughed again, mounting his chestnut and kicking it into a brisk trot. Elara swung into the saddle of Nightshade, heart pounding but mind clear. They were ready, or as ready as they could be. The first steps onto the trail were tense. Roots snaked across the path, slick with dew, and the dense forest canopy cast shadows that shifted unpredictably. Nightshade's ears flicked constantly, his muscles coiled. With alertness, he was aware of every sound, every movement, every rustle in the underbrush. Yet he did not bolt. He did not resist. He trusted her voice, her hand on his reins, the gentle pressure of her legs. Easy, she whispered, letting her weight flow. With his movements. Together. The words were rhythm as much as reassurance, a cadence he recognized. Slowly, carefully, they navigated the trail. Yorick surged ahead, chestnut hooves pounding, confident in his skill. Elara held back slightly, allowing Nightshade to gauge the terrain. A fallen log loomed ahead. Yorick's horse leapt effortlessly, landing with a smooth, practiced grace. Nightshade froze, his muscles coiled, tail flicking nervously, eyes wide. Trust me, Elara murmured, her hand brushing along his neck. She allowed him to choose his pace, to approach the obstacle on his own terms. With a powerful exhale, Nightshade surged forward, leaping over the log in a single, fluid motion. The ground beneath them shook with controlled force as they landed safely, and Elara's heart lifted. This was more than training, it was mutual understanding in action. The trail narrowed further. A stream rushing across the path. Yurek's horse splashed through easily, his rider's smug grin momentarily visible. Nightshade hesitated, one hoof at the edge of the water, eyes flicking toward her. Ilara's hand stayed light on the reins, her voice steady and calm. "We can do this. Step by step. Trust." Then, with a powerful bound, Nightshade crossed, water sprang around them. Ilara felt the surge of exhilaration and pride not in conquering Yarick or the trail, but in the affirmation of their bond. They moved together in rhythm and understanding, each obstacle an opportunity to reinforce trust, to strengthen the connection that had grown over weeks of patience and care. By the time the forest opened into a sunlit clearing, Yarick was waiting, smug grin fading slightly as he observed the duo. Nightshade pawed the earth, ears flicking, eyes bright and alert, yet calm and composed. Ilara slid lightly from the saddle, pressing her hand to his neck. "See? Strength is not in fear, but in trust." For the first time, Yarick's gaze betrayed a hint of respect. Ilara didn't wait for praise. It wasn't needed. What mattered was what they had proven to each other, to themselves, and to the silent rhythm of understanding that bound them. Nightshade snorted softly, nudging her shoulder, a simple acknowledgement of a shared victory. Ilara smiled, letting the forest swallow the echoes of the challenge behind them. They were ready for whatever lay ahead. The sun had barely pierced the canopy of the forest trail when a sudden rustling erupted in the underbrush. Ilara's heart jumped. Nightshade's ears twitched sharply, and his muscles coiled with tense anticipation. The forest, which had seemed like a controlled challenge the day before, now felt unpredictable, alive with potential danger. Every shadow, every snapping twig seemed magnified, and the path ahead narrowed with gnarled roots and fallen branches. Ilara tightened her grip on the reins, though she kept her hands gentle, letting Nightshade feel her calm. "Easy, boy," she murmured. "We've faced challenges before. Trust me." Nightshade snorted softly, nostrils flaring, but did not bolt. The bond they had nurtured over weeks of patient care held firm, grounding both of them in the moment. A sudden crash to the side startled them. A deer darted across the trail, hooves striking rocks and sending dirt flying. Nightshade leaped instinctively, but Ilara leaned with him, her weight flowing in harmony with his body. It's okay," she whispered, keeping her voice low and rhythmic. Slowly, the stallion's tension eased, and he glanced at her, eyes bright but searching, as if asking, "Will you keep me safe?" They pressed on, the trail narrowing further. The forest floor was slick with mud from a recent rain, roots protruding like jagged teeth. Each step required precision, trust, and focus. Ilara guided Nightshade verbally and with subtle shifts in her balance, allowing him to take the lead while staying present and steady. The real test was not just the obstacles, it was their ability to move together under pressure, each aware of the other's instincts, each responsive to the smallest cue. Then came the creek. The rushing water looked deceptively shallow, but its current cut sharply across the narrow path. Yorick's earlier smirk echoed in Ilara's mind, the words of doubt and mockery still lingering. Nightshade froze at the edge, hooves pawing at the muddy bank. He flicked his ears toward her, wide-eyed, muscles taut. This was the moment to demonstrate their connection. "Ilara," he seemed to say without words, "I can't do this alone." She leaned forward, voice soft but firm. "Step by step together," she murmured. "I will not let you fall. You are strong, but we are stronger together." Nightshade snorted, exhaled, and after a tense pause, stepped into the rushing water. Each hoof struck with caution, testing the grip of the muddy bed, and she leaned with him, shifting weight to help him balance. The water surged around them, but they moved as one, hoof after hoof, until they reached the opposite bank safely. Relief washed over her, and she let her hands gently rub along his neck. "See? You are unstoppable when you trust yourself and me." Nightshade lowered his head slightly, nudging her shoulder in acknowledgement. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes of the bond they had forged: respect, trust, and mutual reliance. The final test came shortly after. A fallen tree blocked the path, its trunk wide and heavy. Nightshade balked, planting his hoofs firmly, ears pinned back as his instinct screamed caution. Elara's stomach tightened, but she remained calm, letting the stallion understand that. She was not commanding, but guiding. "Together," she said softly, brushing the side of his neck. "We can do this, one step at a time." She shifted her weight slightly, allowing him to sense her intention, her confidence, and her respect. Nightshade flexed his powerful haunches, muscles coiled like springs, and with a powerful bound, he cleared the trunk. Elara clung lightly, letting him feel her balance, her presence, not a rider above, but a partner beside him. When they reached the end of the trail, sunlight broke through the thick canopy, illuminating the clearing like a reward. Both human and horse were breathing hard, muscles trembling with exertion, but their eyes met, and in that moment there was no fear, no doubt, only understanding. They had faced danger together, each trusting the other implicitly. Elara slid from the saddle, pressing her forehead to Nightshade's neck, feeling the rapid heartbeat beneath her hands. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it. Not because of fear, not because of force, but because we trusted each other." Nightshade snorted softly, nudging her shoulder, the smallest gesture of acknowledgement and pride. The forest, once intimidating and untamed, now felt like a testament to their bond. Every rushing stream, fallen log, and hidden obstacle had been met not with dominance, but with patience, communication, and trust. In the quiet after the challenge, Elara realized that strength was not measured by raw power alone, but by the courage to face fear together, to move as one, and to honor the spirit of the wild rather than trying to break it. For Nightshade, the test had revealed not just a rider, but a partner worthy of his strength. And for Elara, it confirmed that her faith, patience, and quiet persistence could unlock the extraordinary potential in a being so often misunderstood. Together, they were unstoppable. The forest clearing had barely settled into quiet when the next challenge arrived, one that neither Elara nor Nightshade could have anticipated. They were returning along the trail, their muscles still humming with the exertion of the previous tests, when a sudden cry echoed through the trees. A young boy from a nearby village had wandered too close to the cliffside and slipped, his frantic yells carried by the wind. Elara's heart froze. The path to the boy was narrow, flanked by steep drops on one side and tangled roots on the other. She had no choice but to trust Nightshade completely. "We need to be careful," she whispered, mounting quickly, voice steady, trying to mask her fear. The stallion's ears flicked toward her, nostrils flaring, sensing the urgency. He shifted his weight beneath her, muscles coiling with readiness. Fully aware that this was no ordinary ride, the forest seemed to close around them as they raced toward the sound. Every step was calculated. Loose stones threatened to slip beneath hooves, and branches clawed at their path. Nightshade's eyes were sharp, scanning each movement, every potential hazard. Unlike other horses that might have panicked or bolted, he moved with a fierce intelligence, listening to her guidance while also assessing the terrain. They reached the cliffside in moments that felt stretched by fear. The boy clung to a protruding root, one leg dangling over the edge, eyes wide with terror. Elara leaned forward, her heart in her throat, whispering soothingly to both him and Nightshade. "Steady," she murmured. "One careful step at a time." Nightshade hesitated, his powerful body poised like a spring, nostrils flaring as he measured the distance between the safer ground and the precarious edge. He snorted, shifting his hooves carefully, and Alara felt his trust radiate through every tense muscle. He wasn't just strong. He was aware, intuitive, and ready to act in a way that demanded respect rather than force. "Alara, I can't reach." "Him!" she exclaimed softly, realizing the boy was too far for her to grab from the saddle. Nightshade's ears twitched, as though he understood the predicament. Then, with a careful, almost reverent motion, he lowered his head slightly, hooves steady against the uneven terrain, and moved closer to the cliff edge. Each step was deliberate. Each placement of his weight measured. The boy's cries intensified, but Nightshade remained calm under Alara's guidance. She leaned forward, hand outstretched, and the boy grabbed hold of her wrist. Nightshade adjusted subtly, moving his body like a living balance beam, ensuring neither Alara nor the boy slipped. It was a silent, dangerous dance, every step dependent on complete trust and mutual understanding. Finally, with a strong, controlled motion, Nightshade shifted his weight, allowing Alara to pull the boy safely onto solid ground. She collapsed onto the earth, heart racing, as the boy scrambled away from the cliffside, trembling but unharmed. Nightshade lowered his head, nostrils quivering, but his gaze remained on Alara, as if silently asking, "Did we succeed? Did I do right by you?" Tears blurred her vision as she stroked his neck. "You saved him," she whispered, voice choked. "You trusted me, and you were brave enough to act. You didn't just follow, you chose to protect." Nightshade snorted softly, pressing his head against her shoulder in a rare display of affection. In that moment, Alara understood the depth of their bond. It wasn't simply trust built on routine or gentle guidance. It was mutual respect forged in danger, honed by patience, and tempered by the recognition of each other's strengths. The townspeople, who had been gathering near the edge after hearing the boy's cries, watched in awe. The stories they had whispered about Nightshade being untamable were replaced by a quiet reverence. Here was a horse, wild and fierce, yet capable of courage, intuition, and loyalty beyond measure. And beside him, a young woman who had chosen understanding over domination, patience over force. Alara knelt beside Nightshade, resting her forehead against his mane. "I see it now," she murmured. "Strength is not just in muscles or speed. Strength is in courage, in intelligence, in heart. And you have all of it." Nightshade's steady breathing, the subtle flex of his muscles beneath her hands, was answer enough. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows through the trees, Alara realized something profound. This revelation would define not only their relationship but the life they would build together. Nightshade was no ordinary horse, and she was no ordinary rider. Together they had faced fear and uncertainty, survived danger, and emerged stronger, not because one dominated the other, but because both honored the spirit that connected them. In that quiet forest clearing, with the boy safe and the wind rustling through the trees, Alara smiled, knowing the journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more tests of courage and patience, but she also knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, united by trust, respect, and an unspoken understanding deeper than words. The townspeople had gathered at the edge of the clearing, murmuring in awe at the scene before them. Nightshade stood tall and proud, muscles gleaming in the late afternoon sun, his dark eyes alert but calm. Beside him, Alara brushed the damp strands of mane from her face, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of their shared exertion. What they had witnessed, the stallion's courage, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty, was more than spectacle. It was proof of a bond forged through patience, understanding, and mutual respect. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. "I've never seen a horse like that," one elder murmured, voice shaking with disbelief. "And that girl, she rides him as though they are one." Others nodded, their eyes still fixed on the duo. What had once been derided as foolishness buying, an untamed, dangerous stallion, was now recognized as extraordinary. Ilara's name spread quietly, spoken with awe rather than skepticism. Yarick, who had challenged her weeks earlier, rode up on his chestnut, face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and grudging respect. His previous arrogance had been tempered by observation. He dismounted and approached cautiously, every step measured. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his tone low. "I didn't think. I didn't see. That horse trusts you." "Completely. And you've earned it." Ilara inclined her head, not with pride, but with quiet acknowledgment. "Trust is not given lightly," she said softly. "It is earned through patience, understanding, and respect. He is not just a horse. He is a partner. And I am learning from him as much as he is learning from me." The crowd fell silent for a moment, taking in the significance of her words. This was no ordinary horse and rider pair. They were a living demonstration that strength could be gentle, that wildness could coexist with loyalty, and that courage was measured not in dominance but in connection. Children stepped closer, eyes wide, marveling at Nightshade's size and power. One small voice piped up, "Can I pet him?" Ilara smiled, lowering a hand. Nightshade sniffed gently at the offered fingers, nostrils twitching, ears pricked forward. The child's laughter rang out, light and bright, as the stallion responded with a soft nuzzle. Even in the midst of admiration, Nightshade retained his awareness and intelligence. He was still wild, still independent, but willing to engage, on terms that honored both him and the human who had earned his trust. Farmers and merchants, who had once whispered doubts and scoffs about the dangerous beast, now stepped closer with admiration in their eyes. "I've never seen anything like it," one man admitted. "Most riders break a horse, bend it to their will. But you've done something different. You've respected him, and he's responded in kind." Ilara's gaze drifted toward Nightshade, who shifted his weight lightly, ears flicking toward her, eyes bright with awareness. She stroked his neck gently, feeling the subtle quiver of muscles beneath her fingers, a living affirmation of their bond. "We've come a long way," she murmured, more to him than to anyone else. "And this recognition is not for me. It's for the trust we've built together." A hush fell over the clearing as the crowd witnessed another subtle demonstration of their connection. Without command or pressure, Nightshade moved closer to Ilara, lowering his head to brush against her shoulder. She responded with a quiet pat, leaning into him, and the simple act spoke louder than words. Here was a creature once feared as untamable, now showing restraint, loyalty, and understanding. And beside him stood a young woman whose courage, patience, and insight had earned not just respect, but true partnership. Even Yorick nodded slowly, his pride wounded but his respect undeniable. "You've done what many cannot," he admitted. "He trusts you." "Completely. And I can't argue with that." The townspeople, previously skeptical, began to murmur their approval. Some offered congratulations, others simply stared, awed. Children ran around the paddock, imitating the careful steps and gestures of Ilara, imagining themselves in her place. Farmers shared nods of respect, whispering about how patience and understanding could accomplish what brute force never could. As the sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows over the clearing, Ilara felt a quiet satisfaction. Recognition from the town mattered little compared to what she had gained. The unwavering trust of a creature so proud and fierce, a bond that no words could fully capture. but seeing the respect reflected in the eyes of those who had doubted her once, she realized something profound. Strength and connection could inspire not just fear or awe, but admiration, understanding, and even hope. Nightshade nuzzled her shoulder one last time before lowering his head to graze, calm and alert, every movement confident and measured. Ilara whispered softly, "This is just the beginning. Together, we can face anything." In that golden moment, human and horse stood as equals, partners in spirit, earning recognition not through dominance or spectacle, but through courage, patience, and the extraordinary bond they had forged together. The sun rose slowly over Redridge, painting the town and surrounding fields in soft gold. The air was cool but carried the scent of wildflowers and dew, a quiet serenity that seemed to mirror the balance between Ilara and Nightshade. After weeks of trials, challenges, and shared triumphs, they had reached a rhythm neither could have. Imagined at the start, a harmony born of trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Ilara led Nightshade to the edge of the paddock, brushing her hands along his sleek coat. He stood tall, muscles relaxed, ears flicking attentively toward her. Voice. Unlike the stallion of the auction, tense and wary, this Nightshade was calm, confident, and fully aware of his own strength. But his wild spirit remained, not diminished, only tempered by the partnership they had built together. "You've come a long way," she murmured, leaning close to press her forehead to his mane. He snorted softly, a gentle acknowledgement that felt like a conversation without words. Every lesson, every moment of patience, every shared challenge had brought them here, not just to a point of trust, but to a shared understanding of each other's hearts. Today there was no challenge, no rival to impress, no obstacle to navigate. Today was about presence being together in a world that had tested them and emerging stronger. Ilara swung lightly into the saddle, feeling the familiar surge of Nightshade beneath her. They moved as one fluidly, each step a silent dialogue. He responded to her shifts in weight, her breath, her subtle verbal cues, and she responded to his instinctive adjustments, his alertness, his readiness. They were not master and animal, they were partners, equals bound by experience and trust. The forest trail awaited, its familiar twists and turns now a place of comfort rather than fear. Nightshade's hooves struck the earth with measured precision, the rhythmic sound echoing softly through the trees. Shadows of sunlight and leaves danced across their path, and Ilara let herself relax fully into the ride. She had learned that harmony did not come from control or command, but from awareness and patience. Nightshade was strong, fierce, and untamed, but together they had become unstoppable. As they reached a clearing, the one that had tested them so fiercely weeks ago, Ilara dismounted and led Nightshade to the center. The wind lifted his mane, and his dark eyes gleamed with intelligence and spirit. She ran her hands along his neck, feeling the ripple of muscles beneath, the quiet strength that had been honed not through domination, but through respect and partnership. "Wild you may be," she whispered, "but together we are unstoppable." Nightshade nudged her shoulder gently, ears forward, as if to affirm her words. The bond between them was no longer tentative, it was solid, a living, breathing testament to what patience, trust, and understanding could achieve. They had faced danger, fear, and doubt and emerged united, stronger than the sum of their challenges. Ilara walked to the edge of the paddock and gazed out over the rolling fields, the town in the distance bathed in morning light. She reflected on the journey, the auction, the first tentative touches, the early rides filled with tension, the trials on the forest trail, and the moment when Nightshade had saved a life. Each memory was a thread woven into the tapestry of their partnership. In the quiet of that moment, she realized that harmony was not a single achievement, but an ongoing dialogue, constant interplay between freedom and guidance, wildness and trust, courage, and patience. Nightshade, proud and untamed, had taught her as much as she had guided him. Their connection was an acknowledgment of strength in its purest form, intelligence, courage, and spirit tempered by trust and care. Townspeople, who had once doubted her, watched from afar with reverent eyes. Some smiled, some whispered, but all recognized the extraordinary bond before them. It was no longer just the story of a girl and a wild stallion. It was a living example of what respect and patience could accomplish. A lesson etched in the motion and poise of two beings moving as one. Alara mounted once more, feeling Nightshade shift beneath her with his familiar, confident rhythm. She guided him through gentle trots and flowing turns, their movements synchronized, effortless. Every muscle, every gesture, every glance was part of the same conversation, the same dance dot as the sun climbed higher. Spilling light across the paddock, Ilara laughed softly, a sound of pure contentment. Nightshade tossed his head playfully, ears pricked, and she knew in that moment that this was the life they had earned together. Free, wild, and yet in perfect harmony. Finally, she dismounted and stood beside him, hand resting lightly on his neck. "We've come far," she whispered, voice soft but full of certainty. Nightshade pressed his head against her shoulder, and together they watched the world awaken around them, two spirits united, free yet bound by the strongest force of all, mutual trust and understanding in that golden morning, with wind stirring his mane and the light painting the paddock in soft brilliance. Ilara knew their journey was far from over. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Wild he may have been, but in their unity there was peace, strength, and harmony, the perfect culmination of every trial, every moment of patience, every act of courage that had brought them to this place. And for the first time, she truly understood. Some bonds are forged not in control, but in respect.